Hi, welcome back to the shop. Thanks for stopping by. This week we're going to make a salad bowl out of this piece of yellow birch. It's 15 inches in diameter, 6 inches top to bottom. And what I'm going to do, because I've got a 2-inch wall pretty much all the way through this piece. It is I guess what you call a twice turned bowl. It's a roughed in blank. The center's been hollowed out. I'm going to mount it upside down on this faceplate, which you've seen me use in other videos. I'm going to put a full bead of glue all the way around it because it is a heavy piece of wood and it has dried oblong as they all do. And I'm going to turn in a mortise so that I can use my 4-jaw chuck, and I'll expand the chuck in the mortise, and that's a much more stable way to hold a piece this big rather than gluing it onto a faceplate. I have turned a lot of pieces this size on hot melt glue in a faceplate, and I haven't turned any this big since I've gotten the 4-jaw chucks, because I've only had them for a year or so actually. So I'm going to put a bead of glue on this and get it on the lathe, and then we'll be back. Okay, so we're all locked up on the lathe. You can see I got a bead of glue all the way around. When you do put a bead of glue on this big, unless you have a really high powered glue gun, you're probably going to have to stop a couple times to let it heat up so that you get good melt on your glue. It's not balanced too badly. The issue is that this was round in on the metal lathe like some of the other ones here that I have, but it was cut first with a saw, so I actually centered it based on the narrowest diameter here. Anyhow, we're going to give this a go. Turn it down nice and slow. One thing you need to watch out when you're doing a piece this large, this is a 20-inch swing lathe, so I do have lots of room, but 20 inches doesn't account for the banjo, and so the space underneath of you have to watch your bed and your tail and your tool rest obviously, but you also have to watch the banjo underneath, make sure it turns freely. So I'm going to start this out nice and easy. We'll knock a little bit of that excess off the corners, and you see I have the tailstock up so that it can't get away. When you're held on differently, when you're held on by a chuck, you'd set your speed based on whether or not your lathe is vibrating or not, and you can tell this machine's not moving. It's a heavy machine. It's bolted down to the floor on 4 corners, so it will shake when you thrash it hard, but in this case the glue is more of an issue. The hold of the glue is more of an issue than the vibration of the lathe. So and you can see that we're pretty close here in terms of making sure that we got the biggest piece of wood that we can get around. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to remove the tailstock, and I'm going to just shape this bottom a little bit, cut my mortise in the bottom. It's nice if you can work the bottom up, because it does cut much better when you're working up, cutting down the grain. So I'm going to do a little bit of it, see how it acts. So the ideal tenon size for this is a Vicmark 120 chuck. The ideal tenon size is 2 5/8, just enough that it slips over this, and then when you expand it has the most amount of contact it has when it's closest to this circle. You don't want to bottom out, so I'll make it 1/4 inch deep. And if you notice that they're dovetailed, the jaws are dovetailed. Let me get this on here for you. See how they taper in? That's called a dovetail. You need to cut your mortise the same angle as that to get the maximum amount of grip. Okay, now we're going to turn the other way. Turn the lathe in reverse, just because it's easier to get into. This tool has been ground so that it will put exactly the right dovetail angle on. Alright, now before I stop and sand that out, I'm going to cut what's going to be the foot of the bowl. So I'm going to make it fairly wide because it is a big bowl. But when you put that chuck in there and expand it, the only thing that has to hold it in place is the strength of this wood that's around it. So you don't want to make it small. Even if you're doing a smaller bowl, you don't want to make it too small. Okay, so in the process of tapering this bottom in a little bit so that it'll sit flat, I've taken away a little bit of my mortar, so I'm going to cut it just a little bit deeper. And it only requires to be deeper the width of this. It doesn't have to be deeper the whole way. You can leave that center in there, and lots of times I actually do come out and then concave them to leave a little bit more meat in the bottom so that I can have the useful space in the bottom of the bowl or the inside of the bowl. Alright, I'm going to sand this mortise up, I'm going to sand this base, and then I will be back and we'll pop it off with the faceplate. Just going to sand it up to 320 right now. I'm just going to put on some abrasive paste. Okay, now we're going to go on with some microfine paste. Okay, so now that the bottom is finished off, I can put the 4-jaw chuck in. I'm going to pop this glue off with a chisel. Same as before, just going to slide the chisel behind it. Just pry it off. So I'm going to chew away at this, and I'll be back when I get things slipped around. A little bit of tear out there, but I think that's as good as I'm going to get. So I'm going to sand that up, and then we'll clean out the center. Alright, so there's a little bit more tear out there than I like. So I'm going to try and put a little bit of salad bowl oil on it to soften the grain. I'm just going to give it a nice gentle slice, see if I can get that off there. There's a really soft spot in that grain. It's not wanting to cut with the gouge or the scraper. Okay, so I got about 40 minutes into sanding the outside of this now. I'm just going to put some denatured alcohol on, clean some dust off. I sanded this up to 320. Just going to give it some abrasive base now. I'm not going to film the whole thing, this is going to take a while. Alright, I'm going to buff this off camera and I'll do the microfine afterwards and bring you back. Here's a quick peek of the outside before we start back on the inside. Pretty up really nice. That heartwood's super looking wood. It's almost pink in places. Alright, we're back to the inside of the bowl now. I'm just going to start making the thickness that I want at the lip of the bowl and work it right down through, because it is going to chatter. So I'm going to try and get my thickness started right here, and I'll just try and maintain it all the way down through. And where it's in so deep, the tool rest doesn't reach to the bottom real well across a wide area, so I'll have to keep setting the tool rest back and just trying to blend my cuts in so I get a nice smooth transition from the sides to the bottom as I go. You want to get the bevel onto the side, and that helps to take the vibration out. If you're just going straight in without riding the bevel, you'll get a lot of vibration. So, pretty close to the thickness that I want. I'm going to take just a tiny bit more off, but not much. Alright, so I like that for a thickness. Now I'm just going to work at hogging out the rest. Okay, now before I get this too thin all the way down, I'm going to put the radius on the top of my lips, which I like to do. I don't like a square lip on a ball, I like a little rounding to it. One thing you have to watch when you're doing any bowl really is that you leave yourself enough wood in the curve of the bottom and on the inside that you can make a nice transition cut so that your inside mirrors your outside, so that you don't get down and then wind up making a really heavy sidewall back in this part of the bowl. And you also don't want to come out through the bowl. So you got to make sure you keep an eye on this thickness right in here, so that you can make a nice transition cut. So you don't want to go straight in with these too far and then have to make a sharp cut that has a noticeable bend in it that's not matching the contour of the bowl. Yeah, still got lots. So we're really good right here. I'm gonna take just this thickness down to about here, and I've got all kinds of wood left here for the transition cut. Lots of wood. That's about as deep as I can get. So you can see that I'm gonna have to work off the edge of the tool rest for a bit. Now this has got a negative rate carbide on it, and it's less apt to grab than that of the chisel. So this is where it's easy to get a catch right here when you're blending this turn. And this is a stiffer tool, believe it or not. It's designed to go farther over the tool rest than the other one is. So I'm going to just work on this for safety's sake. Now, just have to keep walking across the bottom of this, a little bit at a time. You need to be really patient doing this because although the whole thing is turning the same RPM, obviously, the surface speed is much slower in here than it is out here. And so your cut is a lot slower. It's getting a lot less wood passed over the chisel at one time. So you got to take your time, not quite put quite as much pressure on because you're just not getting the speed. Not so bad on small bowls, but on big ones like this, you got to be very patient. You always want to make sure that you turn as much of your finish in your bowl as you can and not sand it, because this is going to sand differently than this, because I'm sure if you can see, well here you can see this is flat. That little circle will sand out very easily, where across here will sand out a little harder, and up here is going to sand out even harder again. And this is hardwood, so it's going to sand out very hard. That's just complete end grain. So what happens if you don't turn it out and you try to sand it out is that you're going to get soft spots with your sandpaper, or spots that are going to sand easier, and you're going to get depressions, and that's going to put you at a whack. It makes it harder to sand. So always want to turn as much in as you can. Now because I'm on the very end, I'm just going to sharpen this gouge a little bit and give that a last pass. One of the challenges of doing this part is that you can't see that. You can feel it, but you can't see it. All right, that feels good. Okay, I'm going to go back into some sanding and I'll bring you back when I get that done. All right, so I've got the inside all sanded up now. I've got two coats of, I got the regular and the microfiber abrasive paste, and so we're pretty well finished up. I'm just going to pop it off now, and I've got to determine whether or not I need to do anything to the bottom or not. Okay, so I left the shop last night, took this bowl into the house, and in all the years that I've been turning, this is the first time I bought something back out in the shop because it just wasn't happy with it. So I don't like the bottom on this. I don't like the mortise because it had to be quite deep. It just doesn't suit the bowl. There's not much definition in the flat rim on the bottom of the bowl, and where there's very little contrast in color in the wood, it just doesn't even look like it has the bottom. So I bought it back out tonight, and I'm going to fix this bottom up to something that I like a little bit better. And usually when you get to that just one more cut thing, bad things happen. So I'm hoping that I'm not going to have a problem. I've got it hot melt glued onto my big faceplate, as you can see, and I've got the tailstock up to it. The tailstock won't need to come off to the very, very end, so I feel pretty good about it not coming off. But again, one never knows, so we're going to give this a go. All right, so I got everything turned out, sanded down to 320. I do have a circle from the tailstock, in there. And what I think I'm going to do, I'm just going to give that a rub with the sandpaper, and I think what I might do is just put a nice little decoration on the bottom and incorporate that so it's all part of the facade. And I wouldn't normally show you the sanding, but I thought if anything was going to happen, bad or otherwise, it would happen without that tailstock there. Always something to be learned when things go wrong. So just in case, I'll film this part. Problem solved. All right, so go over this gently. So thanks again to everyone who subscribed to the channel. I really appreciate it. If you saw this video and you like what you saw, please consider subscribing. That would be much appreciated as well. If you like it, please give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, please give it a thumbs down. Let me know why. And share with your friends. Remember, we are going to have a giveaway at 1,000 subscribers of a hybrid Berlin resin bowl. And if you're not sure what that is, you can check out the channel. You can see 2 or 3 examples of that. And when I'm finished up, I'll put some stills at the end of the video. There, I'm much more satisfied with the look of that than I was before. Alright, I'll have some stills up at the end, as I said, and thanks for stopping in. We'll see you next time.